it can be like detrimental because you end up sometimes in a bit of an echo chamber of your own particular community.
Ethereum can just add more tokens. I just learned this recently.
Correct.
Which is crazy.
Essentially infinite supply. Same thing with...
Any concerns about handing over everything to the community?
Oh, huge amounts of concern. But that's part and parcel of this whole thing. If we are going to ultimately be putting trillions and trillions of dollars on chain.
Hey everyone, Chris Joan, you Overnight Success, and excited to talk Cardano today with my good friend Sheldon Hunt from EMURGO. They were looking at one of the founding partners with Cardano at the start, helped with a lot of the development. And we cover everything from kind of the ideologies in the space through to his new project, which is a Bitcoin kind of layer 2 built on Cardano, which we're super bullish about, and cover the UTXO bit. And his journey, everything from hearing Vitalik pitch Ethereum and Charles going the other way, and everything in between. I think you'll certainly love this conversation. Enjoy.
It's kind of like a funny thing, but essentially all Cardano maxis are all closeted Bitcoin maxis. They love it. There's a key emphasis on decentralization, scarcity, because there's a fixed supply of Cardano, similar to Bitcoin. It's 21 million Bitcoin. For Cardano, it's 45 billion. Sorry, I say 21 million.
On that, right? Also, Ethereum can just add more tokens. I just learned this recently.
Correct.
Which is crazy.
Yes. So it's essentially infinite supply. Same thing with Solana and many other like major chains.
Right.
There is no cap. There is no like hard.
I don't think the market knows that. Yeah. Do they know that? I don't know. I would dare say like most like retail investors aren't really plugged into that because it's not always of that much significance. For some people, it is very significant. Yeah.
And so there are those who believe scarcity is important. It's got to be prioritized. Yeah. Vitalik came through and pitched the group of us. I guess it was probably like 8 or 9 of us here in Hong Kong on smart contracts and what he was building with Ethereum. And seemed really cool. And people put their hands up, and we were part of like the group that helped demo like basically the beta version of Ethereum, which was like the homestead. So did like some of the test nodes and some of like the ideation of like how this could be deployed and some of the early dApps. So it was really, really crazy because it was quite utopian in some ways, as you saw like in the movie.
I can kind of see his journey leading up to it as to how he was thinking, right? This kind of nomadic. I'm thinking like, was it the cactus, or something? But anyway, but I guess the point I was going to say was they kind of like come to this consensus around it should be a non-profit and we shouldn't make any money, and it's like this like I don't know the word for it. But Charles is like, fucking what? These guys are nuts.
Yes.
Yeah. It's almost like for profit or non-for-profit almost.
Yes.
Yeah. Or like, or more of a business mindset. Yeah.
That was like Charles's original take.
Yeah.
That he wanted to have this solve like real world use cases and to work with like companies and actually kind of like plug into where people are, where like, money is. And of course, there were others who disagreed with that because the whole idea is like a bit more revolutionary. Yeah. We don't want to like work with these guys. We want to destroy them in a revolutionary sense. But it's funny how in the time since there have been some shifts where I would dare say in going the nonprofit route for Ethereum, ultimately down the line, there was a bit of like co-opting that was done, certainly at the layer 2 side of things and others in the space where they became more corporatist minded. Genesis was actually very decentralized and it's about like retail. This is back in the heady days of the ICOs. And so it was actually conducted in Japan and raised just from the global community. So actually there was a lot of OG Japanese Bitcoiners who thought the idea of like Bitcoin with smart contracts was a killer proposition and got into Cardano early. It is. And it's
still is.
It still is. And that's
now's
what we're all about. Now is the time. Worked to create the member-based organization for Cardano where it now houses the back end what's the correct terminology for it? But some of the core code components are actually now housed with Intersect, which is that members-based organization. So it now plans out further iterations and updates to the chain.
Has there been any concerns about handing over everything to the community?
Oh, huge amounts of concern. But that's part and parcel of this whole thing.
Of course.
Because you need to get to a point ultimately where the chain and the community needs to stand on its own two legs. You got to like live and breathe the ethos of decentralization.
Yeah.
You might have, and in Cardano's case, there's 3 founding entities, IOG, Charles's company, the Cardano Foundation, and then EMURGO, the Japanese originated company that helped kickstart the founding and the funding for Cardano. And they actually, in the grand scheme of crypto, they actually took a smaller slice of the tokens than you see in other founding entities. So they didn't have like massive holdings of tokens that they could absolutely crush the community. So the communities actually had a pretty large voice from the very beginning, but you still had some of the repositories and like the main kind of genesis keys that have sat with the founding entities. And now that has all been burned. But certainly there was a lot of concern around this whole pursuit because there are people certainly on the one side who are like, absolutely, we should have decentralized the governance and given it to the community years ago, while there are others who are a bit more conservative and concerned because this is like, it's a major investment. It's a major ecosystem. It's now $30 billion to kind of turn it over to the mob.
I'm not going to do a contract with someone that's completely anonymous or whatever. I need to know who's on the other end. So it's like, and I would say most, if not all, are talking, they want mass adoption.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're not going to, but you're not going to get, so you're going to take some, there's always 2 camps, I guess.
There's compromises, right?
Yeah, compromises.
There's some compromises that need to be made. Of course, there are certainly like those projects that want to lean into potentially like the privacy components of what could be done. And I know, like, shout out again to Charles and the guys at IOG who are pushing ahead with Midnight, which is like the new like privacy chain there. With the substrate, they're combining different best of use practices from different chains to build this out. But it is like tough going, but it's pretty commendable. But yeah, like there are going to need to be some trade-offs for like ultimate mass adoption and usage because, you know, to your point, like no one's going to want to sign up for any major contractual obligations, $1 million contracts with somebody who, what about your counterparty risk? Don't really know about that. But then if you add in too many layers to Cyberpunk, like I can't get my grandmother to pay for her groceries with crypto. Like she's not going to get a wallet, and it'll be just for them at best a speculative asset that they hope goes up. But the utility beyond that is lost on them because it's just too much. So I would hope we get to a point where we're not trying to beat everyone into one camp because I don't think it's going to be possible. We need to take some comfort in knowing that kind of diversity and chaos is going to be actually the way forward here. Like even if I take a step back and I just look non-judgmentally or judgmentally at the entire blockchain space, there are still components to Cardano that shine out to me. A lot around the ecosystem, community commitments, decentralization, and more than any of that, actually, for me personally, is the security side of things. There aren't any wallet drainings that happen because being like UTXO, it's just as secure as Bitcoin. It's the only time you're losing your stuff is if you're making your own mess ups around like sending assets out. But it's all very like transparent in there. And Cardano has not had any outages, no downtime. The chain has never crashed out, which is not something that most chains can say. Like the vast majority of chains have unfortunately gone down. And some have gone down much more than others. And so I'm personally of the opinion that if we are going to ultimately be putting trillions and trillions of dollars on chain, it's going to be done by people who are going to need to have some assurances that they can access their resources, their funds, their tokens all times of the day, no matter what. They're secure and it's available. The chain isn't going to go under for them. And that is an insurance that can be provided by Cardano and Bitcoin.
Thank you for listening to Overnight Success. We hope you enjoyed hearing from our guests and learning about their inspiring journeys. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and share it with your friends. And remember, with hard work and dedication, anything is possible.